Legionella, why you need to be testing. So in this, what we're going to cover is what is Legionella. I think it's really worth just to understand what the bacteria is. Legionella on board your vessels and the risk that it can have. What happens if there is an outbreak, because it can happen. What you can do to reduce the risk of Legionella. So these are actually some practical steps you can take immediately to reduce the risk of anyone becoming sick. And then the Legionella Max testing kit. And then there is, at the end, the video demonstration. This is something I've already done. We'll see how that goes. With this, I know we do have 45 minutes booked, maybe a little bit shorter than that, just depending on how quickly we go through it all. Like I say, this is sort of a basic introduction to it and what it is you can do now. So straight on then, what is Legionella? So Legionella is a bacteria. It's actually a huge group of Legionella. And half of these can cause disease. And it's actually the ones that are found in water that cause disease. Legionella pneumophila is what it is we look for. Now, this actually causes about 85% of all Legionella symptoms and diseases. And this is then broken down again into a number of different serotypes, but it's serotype 1 that then causes 85% of all illnesses. Now, Legionella itself is actually very common. Almost all freshwater sources in the world have Legionella. And that could be from rivers to, pipework within a hotel or a building. Even the buildings that we're in at the moment, they can house it. But it can be very hard to detect. So Legionella is slightly different to a lot of other bacteria, and then it can effectively go into a dormant state. Now, you may see it called VBNC. This means viable but not culturable. So all that really means is it hasn't been killed, whether that be superheating, superchlorination, it hasn't been killed. It's reverted back to a state where it cannot replicate. Now, that means that it is still there. It's just at that time, it isn't able to culture, it isn't able to grow. It also lives in biofilm. When we say it's found in freshwater sources, it doesn't often live in the water, but it's biofilm. Now, you've normally seen this probably whenever you clean a tap or a shower. It's like a slime. That is biofilm, and that is where it grows. And it can adapt to its environment. Like we say, it can revert back to a dormant state. It'll change then that it can't grow, but then if that environment then becomes peak for it to start growing again, it will, meaning it's very difficult to actually get rid of Legionella once you've got it. So as I said, it often grows in the biofilm inside your pipes. The issue isn't that it's there and that you drink it. It's actually, it affects the lungs. It gives pneumonia-like symptoms. So what happens when you get Legionella is you're actually breathing it in, which tends to be from places like showers. If you're on cruise ships, it could be saunas, it could be hot tubs. But effectively, as the water goes through the pipe, it takes some of the Legionella with it. As it then heats, it becomes an aerosol in the form of steam, and that is then breathed in. And it can actually linger for 3 to 4 hours surviving as an aerosol. So it is quite hardy, it is quite robust in terms of being a bacteria, meaning that especially on things like cruise ships where you may have saunas and sort of wet rooms and hot rooms, that is where that can really linger and potentially affect a lot of people. I don't know if you saw in the news, it was maybe a few months ago, it was in the States, it was at a hot tub convention, and hundreds of people got sick just because they walked past these hot tubs. So it really can affect a lot of people. It does have a 2 to 10 day incubation period. Now, essentially, you'll have no symptoms, and then it will suddenly come on. And they are like pneumonia, so it's going to be affecting your lungs and your breathing. Now, what I find quite shocking is that 10 to 15% of Legionella cases do end in death. We just don't either have the treatment for it, it's caught too late on. And unfortunately, it does end in that. Now, Legionella testing is becoming more common, and diagnostics are becoming better. So there is actually a lot of potential for that to rise. Now, when it comes to Legionella, it can affect everyone. It really can, but there are more susceptible groups than others. Unfortunately, men are 2 to 3 times more likely to get Legionella. So when we have a male-dominated workforce at the moment, there is a higher chance of those people getting it. Those that are smokers, those that are above the age of 50, and hospital patients. So those that have underlying conditions, their immune system is already compromised, they're already feeling sick. And we will get onto that in a bit more detail shortly, obviously with the medical rooms on board our vessels. But it's not just a case of pneumonia and then you're okay. There is a lot of long-term effects for Legionella. Number one is fatigue. So just feeling tired, unable to perform, unable to do your job. And this is 75% of all people who have Legionella and survive are experiencing this. So it's not just a case of, like I say, getting better, going back to work. There's potential that you won't be able to work. And in some cases, up to a year. So there's neurological symptoms, 66% or 2/3 of all people. Neuromuscular symptoms, again, high at 63%. But in terms of all of it combined, 7 out of 8 survivors are experiencing health-related quality of life issues. So this isn't something that people easily heal from once they've had it, and it can have serious effects later on, whether they're then working or not being able to get paid, or potential other risks as well associated with getting it, whether that be to the company or to them. And it's not a new thing. You've probably seen in the news a lot of it does relate to cruise ships. People do try and tackle the threat, and that they should actually be doing more as well. Like I said, we are going to run through some practical steps that you can do, but I think a big part of that is also testing for it as well, and that is testing regularly. But cruise ships, obviously, we think of the most because we're going to have passengers. There's a lot of people. They are going to have these hot tubs, but it isn't just there. There is articles as well on the more commercial side. I think just to look at that, $310,000 awarded to an intern for working on one of these vessels who became sick. Now, I know we went through all of the susceptible groups. It can affect anyone. This gentleman, he was 27 years old. He was actually still at the Maritime Academy, actually learning his trade. And effectively, because he got Legionellas, he was in hospital for 1 month, unable to leave. And then it took another year before he'd actually recovered. For him, obviously, medical bills, the fact that he couldn't finish his studies, so he's missed out on a year's worth of work, and then being offered $310,000 just to compensate from that, it shows that it really can affect anybody. And it just begs the question, what if this was either your crew members, or what if it was you visiting the vessel and catching it? Can we all take a year off work because of something that could potentially have been stopped? I know shipping is a dangerous industry, and unfortunately not everything is preventable, but if we can prevent it in some way, we absolutely should be. So on board your vessels then, and we've gone through what it is, how it can affect you, but this is where it's found. So dead legs. Now, if you can remove these, do, because they are just essentially adding to the risk factor. But it tends to be in rarely or disused showers, faucets, because they're not used. So biofilm grows in stagnant water, or where there is a very low flow rate. Unfortunately, these tend to be places like your hospital room. How often is that shower going to be used? Is it being flushed every week? Are these things happening? Now, since hospital patients are already at risk because they've got potentially could be another sickness, lower immune system, if they're then in this hospital room and then exposed to Legionella, there is a much higher risk. And then there's also spare cabins. These aren't used all the time. We see this a lot on some of the larger commercial vessels. We also see it in the cruise industry where it's not fully booked, or even yachts which are going to be taking maybe the winter off. There's nothing being used, the water is completely stagnant, and it's probably then going to have to be flushed completely. We're looking at complicated pipe systems as well. So anywhere where there's a really long area of piping, where the flow rate is very low, that is at risk. Biofilm will effectively grow on the inside, the water will go past it, and then the bacteria will be taken once it starts to move again. You'll probably see, well, you can see from just the cross section of a pipe what that biofilm is. Biofilm seems to be where the majority of it is stored, and then it's just a few pieces of bacteria free floating that get turned into an aerosol. And then there is older vessels as well. Older pipe systems may just have residue building up. One thing, if you're familiar with the Martek Marine Drink Safe kit, is we test for iron. Now, if you look at WHO guidelines, you may think, why are we testing for iron? Before it gets anywhere near dangerous levels, the water will be orange, you'll be able to taste it. But it's the fact that bacteria effectively feeds off of it. So testing for iron is important, because if you have a high iron content, you could then have higher bacterial content as well. So what does happen if there is an outbreak? That I can't actually answer for you. I think these are things that we all have to consider looking into in a bit more detail. We've seen from the news articles that there is potential for legal recourse or settlements. This was one person, $310,000. What if it was passengers? What if it was your own crew? Will you have to get a third party to clean your system? Now, I imagine all of you are already doing water maintenance and cleaning the water systems, the water tanks. But if you've got Legionella, how do you know that doing it again is going to work and actually clear it this time? I've seen different ranges for third-party cleaning systems. Some can be sort of 10,000 euros, some can be 25, some can be higher. But it's something that it's worth knowing about. Are you going to need to do that? And then also, how long will that take? Cleaning a system, is it something that they can do straight away? Or are you going to have to take time out of a busy schedule to have this fully cleaned before you can sail again? Could there be potential loss of earnings? And then there's the crew as well. Medical bills, you're probably going to, in fact, you're almost definitely going to have the medevaced to get to a land-based hospital. Like I say, they could be there for a month. Are you going to be paying for those bills? Same with passengers as well. If it was, say, a ferry, cruise, yacht, could they turn around and say, well, it was your system that made me sick? Is that what's going to happen? Something to ask. And then on the other side, not just looking on the financial, but reputation. In the commercial side, we're going to be looking at quality crew, making sure that, they know the vessel, they know what they're doing, because that's going to have peak operational performance. If there suddenly goes around that everyone's getting sick, will they want to continue working? On the cruise ship, who wants to go on a vessel that's had a confirmed outbreak of Legionella? We've all seen in the news with the coronavirus, and it's really battering the cruise shipping industry at the moment. And why would this be any different? If people are suddenly getting very sick, they're spending a month in hospital, they're potentially not recovering for 12 months afterwards, there's a 10 to 15% chance of them dying. Are they going to want to continue? And then super yachts, very similar to that of cruise ships, but it is exclusive clients. We've done a little bit of work in the yachting industry. We actually find a lot of the business is done through, very well established connections, very word of mouth. And that could potentially affect any future business, whether it be for that yacht, whether it be for the yacht's business, whether it be for your company managing it. So it's something to really sort of take into account and think this could happen. So as I did mention, what can you do to reduce the risk? And like I say, these are practical steps that you can do now. You can start implementing to keep that risk down. So water maintenance plan, I'm sure you all have, but you can look at the WHO guidelines, you can look at the MLC, what they're asking for, and essentially establish a regular maintenance plan. And I will always recommend this to be logged so that you can actively see that it's taking place. and ensure that everything's being done as it should. But actually, water temperature is a huge thing. Majority of water testing kits now do come with a thermometer. You want to make sure that it is below 20 degrees and above 50 degrees at its hottest. Now, the best way to actually test this is to go at the outlet that is furthest away from the water tanks. Probably going to be in the bridge on the commercial side. So what you want to do is you want to run your cold tap for a minute and take the temperature. Then you want to do it exactly the same with the hot tap. And you want to make sure that it is below 20 and above 50. You know, as I say, Legionella is really, really hardy. It is robust. It likes to grow in these temperatures, 35, 36, 37 being the peak for it. So you want to make sure that you're out of the range of any potential growth. If you're storing your hot water, you want to make sure that that's stored above 60 degrees C. That's just, again, to make sure that when it is getting to all of your outlets, it's still going to be above 50 degrees. If it's any lower, there could be a potential part of that pipe that is at greater risk. I've already mentioned this, but remove your dead ends, any pieces of equipment that are not used, and try and avoid water stagnation and low flow rates. This is best done by flushing the system, or not flushing, but at least running the pipes or any disused showers or any disused materials in the system. This may not be entirely possible, but things like rubber, like I say, iron, can cause Legionella to continue to grow. So we want to make sure that you want to be removing that where you can. And then system operates safely and is well maintained. So this should be part of the water maintenance plan. You should be looking at this as well. And then you want to look at cleaning and maintenance. So this is actually really good for those, like I said, in the shower, in the spare cabin, sorry, in the hospital. You want to dismantle, inspect, clean, and soak shower heads. So it's actually really easy. You just unscrew them. Soak it in every 3 months or so. These are the ones that are used often in a disinfectant, a chlorine solution. You know, it could just be sort of like your household sort of disinfection cleaning, but you need to be doing that regularly just to kill off that biofilm, or at least to clean the inside of the pipes as well. I would also recommend, if you're not using a shower, like in the hospital or like in a spare cabin, to actually have it off its hook and pointing downwards. This stops any residue water being stuck in that pipe and will actually cause it to effectively leak out and remove. Especially useful, like I say, if you're not using that shower often. Need to superchlorinate the freshwater tanks at least twice per year and then flush it through as well. You want to flush any water outlet that is not used on a weekly basis. Right, and then most importantly, sorry about that, there was a lot of background noise. We are going to be looking at testing. You got to test regularly. You know, you can do all of these things to reduce that risk, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna get rid of it. You're just reducing that risk at that point. You know, I've already mentioned it is adaptable. Superheating, superchlorinating may not kill it and may change the state to viable but not culturing. If it's still in your system, even as a viable but not culturable state, there's potential for it to come back. You know, shipping is a very unique industry. You will be changing climates as you sail over the earth effectively. Any kind of change like this can make it become cultural again, and rapid growth can happen very, very quickly. I had a look into this. For it to double, it can take anywhere up to 72 hours. And then onboard testing, we obviously find is the best way for that immediate result. I would never say don't get a lab test. You know, do get a lab test if you can. The issue we find is it can take up to 2 weeks to pick that up, and it may not necessarily pick up that viable but not culturable Legionella. The reason is they culture it in a lab. They effectively have to grow it. And if it's not there to start with, or if it's not in that state to start with, and there isn't enough environmental change, you may end up getting a negative result. Now, on board, it doesn't give you the exact amount. It tends to a certain accuracy, and we'll go into that, but it will pick up that viable but not culturing Legionella. And it means you're also getting an on-the-spot result. If you're getting positive at that moment, you may still be fortunate and it's not an outbreak range. It's not at crisis mode. And you can actually start to adapt and to do the water maintenance plan and to clean everything as you need to in order to continue working. If you've got it at that state and you're then getting your results 2 weeks later, it could be too late. You could already have some people showing some symptoms. It could be up to 10 days before they get any work during its incubation period. But we just don't want that to happen. So it needs to be a combination, really. And that is why we have Legionella Max. Legionella Max for us, we already did Legionella. We're known for our potable water testing kit. We wanted to make sure that you had the best and the most accurate kit available on board. I think the biggest thing really for this is it is testing both your water and biofilm. A lot of the time we do just take a sample, we're testing that water sample, and effectively we're testing any of that free-floating bacteria that we saw in a previous slide. I will say I'll give all of these slides to you at the end of this, just so you can review and refresh. But that's what we're testing then. But it's the biofilm where it can potentially be growing way more out of control. So we have also got in this same kit the ability to test for your biofilm. It is highly accurate. We're looking at 100 CFU or colony forming units, and that is actually per litre. So if you think the real content of that, it is a highly accurate test. And then 200 CFU per litre for biofilm. Now, at this point, it would probably take a week to 2 weeks for it to become in an outbreak status where people are at chance for getting sick. We're probably looking around 1,000 CFU per litre when we're at real crisis mode. So this effectively means you can test at a much better accuracy. You can establish the risk beforehand without having to wait for any time, and you can take the actions you need to. And again, back to time, it is a result in under 35 minutes. It will show you presence, it will show you absence, and it is specifically for Legionella pneumophila serotype 1. So that is the one that causes 85% of sickness and the one that causes the death. So it's really, we're really looking for the sort of tailoring it to what it is you need to look for. And it will pick up your viable but not culturing bacteria. I mentioned this in the previous slide. It's something that we all need to be looking out for as well. Yes, we're at no threat at the moment if it's not culturing, but it's there. So if we are sailing somewhere, we're coming out of we've just cleaned everything and it's still there, we know that more action needs to be taken. And then finally, it is designed to be easy. People are busy on board, whether it's you visiting a vessel, whether it's a chief engineer, whether it's the master, they've got a job to do. You don't need to be adding hundreds and hundreds of different things where they need to go through different training packages just to be able to do their job. So this is easy for any crew member to do. It takes less than 35 minutes. They don't need any training at all. Everything comes with very clear instructions. If you do need more support, we are always here, but it's an incredibly easy test to do just to get those results. And then this is where we would have the video demonstration. Unfortunately, I did try this earlier and it didn't work. So this afternoon, when we send everything through, I will also send you a link to this as well. All it is, it's 10 minutes. It's me showing how to do the 2 different tests. So that's the water testing and your biofilm testing, and then how to actually interpret those results. But yeah, thank you very much. If you do have any questions, as I say, my email is here. That is ben.horner@martek-marine.com. Any questions about Legionella, any questions about Legionella testing, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. But thank you very much. I really do appreciate taking the time to listen to this today. Like I say, any questions, send them through. But if not, have yourself a good day. Thank you very much.